The Department of Homeland Security in New Jersey has an article filed under domestic terrorism for Antifa. How's it going, everybody? So we've got an interesting development. Technically, it's not a development, but I've covered protests, I've covered rallies across the country, and what we see a lot of recently are Trump supporters, the right versus Antifa, the left, social democrats, etc. And we've seen some pretty interesting things. We've seen a lot of violence, we've seen the use of mid-level fireworks, explosives, improvised smoke bombs and other explosive devices being thrown into crowds. We've seen people in Antifa bashing people over the head with bike locks, most notoriously. But a decent amount of violence. And so a lot of people have then been asking me, would you call Antifa terrorists? Well, first, terrorism is defined as the use of unlawful physical violence, physical force, against someone or something for a political gain, okay? So in that regard, many people have said what Antifa does by showing up to these rallies, free speech events, Trump events, whatever you want to call it, and engaging in violence is terrorism. Now, for me to assert a definition is a bit difficult. You know, usually I wait for the authorities to say whether or not a specific incident has been deemed terror. You know, we saw the incident in Manchester, and there was an explosion, people were injured, some people were killed, and people were saying, is this terrorism? And we waited for the official word from authorities over whether or not they were going to actually call it terrorism. And yes, it was. There was also another incident where a man drove a van into a bunch of people in front of a mosque. And again, we wait for the authorities to determine whether or not it is terrorism. It's not an easy thing to define, I guess, because, you know, the word gets thrown around a whole lot. But an article from the State of New Jersey Department of Homeland Security and Preparedness has recently started surfacing. People have been sharing it on Reddit. People, different news organizations, typically right-leaning sites, have started writing about this, that the Department of Homeland Security in New Jersey has an article filed under domestic terrorism for Antifa. Now, many people have taken this to say that Homeland Security is officially calling Antifa domestic terrorists. They don't actually say in the article, as far as I know, that they are domestic terrorists, but it says up top on the article, domestic terrorism, anarchist extremists, Antifa. And this is pretty interesting. Mostly what they cite is Antifa showing up to rallies with white supremacists and far-right extremists and engaging in violence. And this is why Antifa is listed under this, you know, under domestic terrorism. But I want to say one thing. Antifa are not anarchists, okay? The word anarchy literally means without authority. It is the opposite of authoritarianism. If you believe you have the right to use physical force or coercive force against another person to make them do what you want, that is authoritarianism, okay? That is the belief that you have the right to force people to do things. True anarchists who don't believe in the right to authority do not engage in violence and do not try to coerce and manipulate people. On the political compass, there's far-left anarchists and far-right anarchists, and they don't really get along. There's anarcho-communists and anarcho-capitalists. Anarcho-communists typically believe that, you know, they should sit around and have a discussion about how things should be done, and anarcho-capitalists typically think there shouldn't be anybody in charge. You should just let the market decide what works and what doesn't. The one thing that both groups share is they don't believe anyone should be in charge, that there shouldn't be a supreme leader or a government controlling what you do. That is the definition of anarchy. So when you see these people go out waving the red and black flag, which is associated with anarchy and anarchism, but they start beating people. They start throwing explosives and bashing people over there with bike locks and other things like that, showing up with clubs and weapons and intimidating people. That's not anarchy. So many of the people who are associated with Antifa are communists. and they fall in the authoritarian left. Interestingly enough, the authoritarian left has a lot in common with the authoritarian right. Mostly the belief that they can just take what they want, that they can use violence against other people to make the world they want. Now, what's truly scary about this article surfacing is not so much that we're seeing Antifa called domestic terrorists or listed under domestic terrorism. I think there's a lot of instances where you could say, yeah, absolutely. You know, look, Antifa shows up to other organized events. And Antifa is not, an organized group. It's like a loose cell structure of people who just fly the banner of Antifa. But typically, they're showing up to other events, rallies that are often peaceful, albeit sometimes reprehensible. You know, if neo-Nazis want to get together and say things that are offensive, or, they're allowed to do it. They are allowed to have free speech so long as they don't incite violence or create a clear and imminent threat. But when Antifa shows up with clubs, weapons, fireworks, like we saw in Portland, like we saw in Berkeley, well, they're the ones creating a clear and imminent threat. But again, what's truly scary is not that they're being called or filed under domestic terrorism, but the oblivious nature of many of these people. When you go to the forums for anarchism, communism, socialism, you see these people totally oblivious to the fact that they are the ones bringing violence to political rallies. They believe they have the right to attack people, and they're shocked to learn that the government, at least in New Jersey, has listed them under domestic terrorism. There's actually a comment from someone arguing that the free speech advocates should be defending their anti-fascist expression, and the flare on their username, the little tag, says, "Fash, get down or get put down," and it shows a flail, a mace, a weapon, like a ball and chain. But it's not just the idea that they have a right to free expression that includes their physical violence on other people. They truly believe there is this good and evil dichotomy, that they are fighting the revolution. They're saying that, the government putting them on this list or filing them under domestic terrorism is like a badge of honor, and they really do believe they're some kind of superhero. But the reality is, most people in this country, most people in the world, would not agree with showing up to someone else's political rally, throwing mortars into crowds, throwing M80s into crowds, and bashing people over the head with bike locks. That makes you a small fringe group of violent extremists. So what does it mean that they're being listed under domestic terrorism? Well, we can look at the Patriot Act, and it's not pretty. These people, if they're truly being called terrorists, they can be arrested. Let's just say there's a lot of things that can be done to them under the Patriot Act, and it's almost carte blanche for the government. So it's always concerning when groups in the US are labeled terrorism. But at the same time, this is a group of people that flies a banner, shows up to events, and physically attacks people. Although I can say that sometimes the conflicts between Antifa and the people on the right is not unique to one side. That sometimes people on the right in the free speech rallies will start hitting the Antifa people first. But I think the important thing to consider is that it's usually Antifa showing up to someone else's event. This article is almost a month old. For some reason, people have just noticed it, and wow, I don't know if New Jersey put out a press release, but it should have been caught sooner, I suppose. But a couple weeks later, and now we're officially digging into this, and I'll look a little bit more into it, but interesting nonetheless. So far, this is just New Jersey. I have searched online, to try and find any other states that may have a similar statement, a similar release about Antifa, but I haven't found anything yet. I just wanted to do a quick update because, people were sharing the story yesterday and I wanted to talk about it. Well, what do you think? I think for the most part, like I said, most people are going to agree. If you're going to go around striking people over the head with bike locks, throwing mortars and M80s into crowds, you fall under the banner of terrorism. But I try to avoid definitively saying yes or no because usually I just wait for the authorities to do so. And at this point, New Jersey at least has listed them under domestic terrorism. Again, I don't know if they're actually calling them a terrorist group, but it's there. So again, comment below, let me know what you think. Click the like button if you like the video. I am currently on a plane heading to Europe. So stay tuned. News coverage coming. I don't want to get too specific about what it is until I get there, but there's several stories that are going to be happening in Europe, so stay tuned. New videos every day at 4 p.m. If you want to support the work that I do, Go to patreon.com/Timcast. Give whatever you can or give nothing at all. My videos will always be free and available. You can follow me on Twitter @Timcast for breaking news, and I will see you all tomorrow.